Good afternoon, I'm Gianpaolo Pioli, the President of La Voce di New York, and with us is the European parliamentary Sandro Gozi, that is here in New York these days, and we stay, not only because he will run a short marathon tomorrow, but because he had an important meeting at the United Nations in preparation of a meeting on the artificial intelligence that will take place with the European Parliament and the United Nations in next spring. We know that there are many different positions. European has a strong position in this regard. American are more flexible and more disappointed about the European position. You kind of interpret of this European position. Can you explain to us what is the difference, what are the obstacles, and what will be the obstacle in front of you?
Yeah, of course, I mean, we think that it is absolutely necessary to both push the innovation in the artificial intelligence field, but also regulate and diminishes the risk linked to artificial intelligence. And this is the very heart of our legislation on artificial intelligence and on digital issues at large. We have developed a set of rules on digital services, on the digital market, on artificial intelligence, which on one side wants to make the market function better. We want a much more competitive, performing market, and not a market controlled only by few actors. And it is clear that this is must be can be done through in Europe new legislation. On the other side, we want to boost the innovation. There are activities that we don't want to see run through the artificial intelligence. For example, we don't want the social scoring. We don't want that the algorithms judge if you are good citizens or I'm a good worker. We don't want the general surveillance. We want to protect personal data. We think that personal data should be considered as a property of each of us. So, I mean, we should develop this approach. In the United States, especially with this new administration, the approach is the opposite. I mean, no rules. The only objective is to try to win the race against China on artificial intelligence, and I can understand that. I mean, we don't want to let the Chinese have the leadership on this, but this administration and the big tech not only do not want to regulate this sector in the United States, but they don't want that us, Europeans, apply our legislation in Europe, and this is totally unacceptable.
How can you match the two positions, and especially now that Trump just made an agreement with Xi Jinping about the chips against the soybean? No, how can you make, because the fact that China has basically returned under control the special, not only the chips but also the terre rare, so they control the 90% of the market. With this agreement, they will control probably 95% of the market with America. Is it a decision that Trump motivated only politically because the farmer in this country go on the street with their trucks and the chiefs don't go on the street, or what?
Well, I mean, certainly it is clear that we know that there is a tendency and probably a mutual interest between the United States and China to divide the world around two poles of domination. And I think that also this deal between agriculture and innovation, I would say, that has been done, go toward that direction. I mean, and we want on one hand, to try to recover a little bit the gap that we have accumulated on innovation, artificial intelligence, both toward the US and also towards China. But we also want to develop a model which is much more compatible with the need of our market. And in the need of our market is that we need to push more for also European actors in the field of artificial intelligence. And also we want to avoid abuses. We want to avoid excessive risks in this use of this new technological tools. And from this perspective, we are certainly developing a model which is different from the Chinese one, where the Communist Party basically control everything, and the American one, where nobody is controlling anything except the big tech.
Yes.
Except
Yes,
the big
yes,
tech,
yes.
they control everything. So I mean, it is. I think that, and I saw that there has been a regression between compared to the Biden administration. Biden administration has started to adopt executive order on artificial intelligence, especially when it was applied within the public authorities, the public administration, etc. Trump obviously has a cancer of this. There is an unholy alliance between the big tech and this Trump administration, and simply they want to dominate the rest of the world. And they see the European Union and they see our legislation as an obstacle to their domination strategy, because after all, we are talking about the first market in the world, or one of the biggest markets in the world, which is the European market. And the point of this agreement is that when you go to Washington, and I was at the Congress a few months ago, I was in Washington also this week, meeting people. Some, especially of the Republican, of the new administration, consider our legislation as a legislation meant against the interests of American firms. And this is totally false.
Why? Can you
But
explain
this is
that?
totally false. But why? Because we want to impose to the very large online platform obligation of moderation. We want to increase the transparency. We want to know how the algorithms function. So we want to create a more performing, more competitive, more open, and more transparent market. Whereas the big tech, together with the US administration, would like to keep this oligopolistic situation, which is not in the interest of our consumers, and is also not in the interest of a well-performing market. Then there is also democratic issues. I mean, through the social platform, there have been strong interferences in our democratic processes, in our elections. There has been an active role played. Take, for example, Elon Musk by the X. In favor of the extreme right in some European countries, in trying to influence the political processes, and this is also absolutely unacceptable. And we want to impose obligation of neutrality and moderation to the platform. So there are two issues: the issue of economic competition, and the issue of respect of the democratic processes.
But in artificial intelligence, you're squeezing between Europe, because if Trump goes one way, Xi goes in the other way, and you go on the other way, how can you mix transparency and censorship at the same time? Because this is the problem. Or regulate the transparency through rules and not through free market.
Yeah, but I don't think that we should be scared of transparency. After all, we think that it would be also in the interest of the platform, because transparency means a confidence building process. Transparency ensures stronger trust between the citizen, the consumer, and the platform. And we think that this is absolutely necessary if we want to further develop the users of the platform in a positive way. I think that the artificial intelligence revolution, digital revolution, is something great for the human mankind. It's one of the biggest opportunity of the last 200 years. But this opportunity entails risks that we have to mitigate. That's the point, and we don't think that the Wild West as such is desirable when it comes to the development of this new technology. It is clear that what we have to do is not only work on the regulatory side, but work also on the innovation side. For this, we must finally build up a truly integrated financial market in Europe, because we want to mobilize the liquidity towards artificial intelligence digital project in Europe. It is clear that today investors, but also savers, look more at the New York Stock Exchange, at the US market, because there are more opportunities from the financial point of view. So we need to create alternative opportunity through the creation of a truly European market, European capital market, a union of capitals and investments, as we call it. And this can be done, we must be done. At the same time, we are revising the European budget, and we have to use a good part of the budget to boost innovation, to boost competitiveness, and we also to have to simplify some part of the legislation which is not in line anymore with the need of innovation.
But for example, the United Nations, do you think has any chance, even though they have all good intention, to become mediator on this so intrigued progress?
Well, this is interesting.
Process?
I'm very interesting, and this is why I was in New York. I had a meeting at the United Nations with some civil servant responsible for this new global, this new cooperation on global governance that the UN has launched with a resolution which was adopted last August. And of course, I mean, the United Nations cannot regulate, but can, first of all, fix objectives, goals to make artificial intelligence more inclusive. Because worldwide, there is a new gap among those countries who are using positive artificial intelligence and countries which are totally excluded by this new technological and innovation process. And this is something that we have to avoid. And from this perspective, I think that the role of the United Nations might help to avoid, I mean, that the gap which is already exists further widens. It is clear that also in the United Nations there is a dynamics which, in my view, is contradictory, especially when you look at the United States of America now, because the United States do not want this process to further develop, and they are there more to block. Whereas the Chinese they are very active in developing a Chinese-oriented approach worldwide towards artificial intelligence. And we do not think that the process should be blocked, differently from the United States, but we are very worried about a Chinese dominance also in the philosophy, in the standard, in the goals. And this is why I think that we should engage and play a positive role. Because the more you try to block, or the more you stay away of a process, the more you leave the Chinese able to occupy all the space. So this is why also at UN level we must follow the process, and as Europeans trying to propose at the global level the model that we are developing in Europe.
What do you think about the young generation? We have in a few days the election of the mayor of New York,
Yeah.
and there is a huge confusion and perfectly insecure result at the end, even though Mandami is highly favored against Cuomo. But the coalition, the last minute's coalition, what happened in the previous election with others, could be a surprise, and because the Republican and Democrat or center Democrat compared with the other that are more progressive or leftist, maybe the number of votes could become moderate more than progressive. You have this kind of experience also in Europe with the French government or others, etc. How do you see the situation? The young generation are progressive to core, or there is a tendency that they're going to build up with the generation of young moderate or Republican or conservative that compare with the others, they contrast with the other on the polls?
Well, I mean, in Europe, the young generation are, I would say that they are divided around two poles. A first pole, which is similar to the young supporters of Mamdani, I mean, very progressive, rightly worried, in my view, to some issues such as the cost of housing, because it's really very difficult for the young generation, for young couple, for young students, have a decent life in big cities like New York, Paris. So there is really an issue of cost of life and also of housing. And you got, and with the tendency to be, I mean, very involved in some international issues, very pro-Pal, to talk about, I mean, the recent conflict between Israel and Palestine. But there is also another part of young people which are very pro-European, that they want a federal Europe, that they are more reform and more centrist. So I would say that those who are committed among young people are in the center-left, center-left, are, I mean, I would say that, I mean, they can they are organized in these two categories. Sort of very progressive, widely extreme left and the center. In Europe, the problem, but I think that also it is in the United States, that there are also young people who are very much attracted by the extreme right. And that is
after especially the assassination of Kirk, there are this movement that start from the campus and come out of the campus and become a political movement too. And do you observe this kind of situation or phenomenon in Europe also or not? Or is more, for example, Harvard, all the campus that are...
Among the young people, there is an attraction toward the extreme right also in Europe. For example, in France, a good part of the young people who do not follow politics but follow the social networks, if you want. Yes. They are very much attracted by Jordan Bardella, by the new extreme right leader. And this is certainly a phenomenon that we must follow, we must counteract, and we must counteract also being present in a positive way, in a constructive way on the social media, where we have accumulated, we have been certainly overcome by the extreme right. The extreme right has been much more shrewd in using the social media for political purposes. But I think that a space where the political battle, especially for young generation, must be fought.
But social media, the problem with social media is between the truth, the fact, and the fake news, no? And the social media. So who's going to promote this kind of future truth if it exists, beside the name of the Donald Trump?
That's a very big question, and this is why we are trying to intervene also with new legislation in Europe, because to answer to your question, you need to invest much more on education, because you can stay positively, safely, go on the social media positively and safely as a citizen if you are empowered, if you are educated, if you manage to understand what is obviously fake and what is true or what is debatable, acceptable. But this is why education is one aspect. On the other side is transparency of the social platform, because if you are an influencer and you go on the social platform, say how wonderful is Sandro Gozi, and you say it because you really think it's a personal view, no problem. But if you are an influencer talking about how many marathons of New York I have run, and you do it because you got a service contract where I pay you, or my sponsor pay you $1 million to talk as an influencer on Instagram about me, well, the followers must know that you are doing for money, must know that you are doing a campaign for Sandro Gozi, and that your sponsor, the sponsor of Sandro Gozi, are X, Y, and Z. This is transparent, and this today doesn't exist. So it is clear that today, especially young people, must be strongly influenced by influencer or some political issues, without knowing that that influencer is not expressing his own personal view, but is part of the organized campaign. This is the kind of innovation, transparency, trustworthy platform, social network that we have to develop.
So basically, just to conclude, we start this interview with a lot of confusion, and we end this interview with more confusion.
More confusion. I hope that it is a disruptive confusion and disruptive change, that we are living a period of big confusion, but to try to enter into a more positive era. But certainly that, we are I would say that we are in a transition. We are in an era of geopolitical transition, but we are also in an era of innovation transition, technological innovation transition. The world is changing very fast. There are huge differences between generations, and this is why we need also a politics which is much more future-proof. And this is the biggest challenge for all of us today.
Sandro, thank you very much for your answer, and as much as I understand, because the world is working fast, being a marathon, you have to run. So
I have to run. I've run 43 marathons in my life, and I will continue to do so.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure.